Welcome back to In the Kitchen. Today we're back in the kitchen with the head chefs over at Funnel Chefs. So, if you haven't met us already, over at funnelchef.io, we work with coaches, consultants, and agency owners to implement proven recipes for success into their business so they can attract more clients and generate more revenue and profits, all while avoiding the guesswork, right? So this is taking proven systems and processes that have worked in our business, in our clients' business, and even our competitors throughout the years. And we've boiled them down to simple but specific, detail-oriented recipes that you can implement into your business. So you don't have to be a tech genius, right? A smooth talking salesperson, or just a genius in general, right? Just like a good recipe, as long as you have the right ingredients and follow the step-by-step process, you can get great results. So, guys, I know this is something that we actually talk about a lot, and it's because it makes sense for a lot of our clients, which is obviously why we discuss it. But, a lot of the people we've worked with, especially newer entrepreneurs, sometimes they're struggling when it comes to figuring out like what form of marketing makes sense for them. And maybe, on the other side of that, in terms of what form of marketing, like what type of content and what platforms actually make sense for them. Because obviously if they're looking at Facebook, right, it doesn't always just mean paid ads, which is what a lot of people think of when they think of that, but it's also organic, like outreach, whether it's Facebook groups, just bolstering your business page, or even if you're posting content on your personal page in support of your business. So I don't know, Mikey, I know because we were discussing this last week with another client, but what do you think? This could be a number of things, but what do you think is one major thing that a lot of newer entrepreneurs struggle with when it comes to figuring out their voice, when it comes to their marketing?
It's a really good question. I think it depends where they're at in the overall process, right? If you are just getting started with your business or your offer, and it's unproven, then organic's probably going to be the best way to go. That or some light paid to do some market testing, right? If you were going with an offer that is already proven, let's say that you've been working with somebody else and you just now started your own business, and what you're providing to the market is something that people want and need and will pay for, then in that scenario, it may make a little bit more sense to skip the step of organic marketing and go right to something a little bit different. The best way to decide at that point, what is going to be your best channel and what kind of assets you need, so forth and so on, are actually looking at the channels themselves and the demographics that use them, and the level of targeting that you can do. So as you know, Chris, and some of our viewers will, some won't, with Facebook, Google ads, things of that nature, you can hyper target, people in certain industries, people of certain age ranges with certain job titles, et cetera. Where you can't necessarily do that if you're, going on a radio station, right? Or a TV slot. You have an idea of who the viewership is on a certain TV or media channel, but it's not going to be hyper targeted like it is with internet, pay-per-click. So that's usually where I start. How develops your offer? Who is it that you're trying to reach? What level of specificity do we need when we reach them? On an aside, you guys know about programmatic marketing? Most people have never heard of this, and it is 69% of marketing ad spend globally today. How crazy is that?
Yeah, no, well, and I think there's always going to be changes coming up, but just, involving like programmatic marketing, right? Obviously that, if someone's not familiar with that, that's, making sure that you're touching or reaching your audience in as many places at once. And, you could almost equivalent to the word, or almost equate it to the word of like omnipresent in a way. But, Mikey, going off what you mentioned, and this is something, so it's on the same side, but in terms of, right, who you're communicating with and what channels, something that I think gets overlooked a lot, as well as the actual content. So it's not where you're saying it, but what are you saying there as well? Because I know we've spoken to a lot of newer entrepreneurs or even people who've been in business for a while. Like I know we've worked with attorneys and law firms, and when it comes to them looking at their marketing, well, sometimes you always hear this this statement of, well, I tried running Facebook ads in the past and it just didn't work for me. I was like, okay, well, what do you mean by that when you say that you tried running ads in the past and it didn't work? So what does your targeting look like? Like, how much money did you actually spend on it? Like, did you even get enough data to know if it doesn't work? And then also, what were you saying? So who were you saying it to? Where were you saying? What were you saying? And sometimes, especially people first start, marketing, they try to do it all themselves. So, people talk about multitasking. Well, I've always heard that's a lie, right? If you're trying to do two things at one time, you're just really giving each one 50% of your, like attention. But, if you're trying to run your business, do your sales, everything, and then you're also trying to figure out how to run your marketing, you're probably going to overlook, some things, whether that's, the copy, right? The actual content, if you're posting videos, if it's images, whatever it is. And that's really important, right? Because even if someone sees, like if the right person sees your marketing, if it doesn't resonate with them, they're not getting any value out of it, then like, what is it really doing? So that's something I would just mention, is that a lot of people aren't paying attention to their content.
Yeah, I think that's an accurate statement, right? If you are not speaking, in an attempt to speak to everyone, you speak to no one, right? You have to know your audience to know what it is that they care about, what unique value proposition to put in front of them, and when the right time is, to present that information. Depending on the sophistication of your buyer and frankly their time availability is going to determine what type of content you're going to make and when, how long those videos or static ads are going to be, how long that VSL is going to be, how long that explainer is going to be, etc. You talk about media buying or trying to do paid ads yourself. We have a close friend that we use often for media buying. He wrote a 350-page document on the ins and outs, the basics of media buying. That's not something that you really want to be trying to digest and learn when you're getting your business off the ground, to say the least. You need to be focusing on what it is that you do best, not trying to, learn a new skill set. My humble opinion.
Right. And that's like, as you were kind of talking about, like where various types of, like whether or not it's organic or media buying really kind of take a precedence into like what it is you should be focused on in business. And like to your point of programmatic advertising, I mean, a lot of people, as you mentioned, probably don't know what that is, especially at a smaller scale, or if they're an up and coming company, or they're kind of stagnant, plateauing with a lot of their marketing approach, where they're typically used to posting an ad on Facebook or Google and then just letting it run and then checking back on the analytics. But I mean, one of the biggest differences, if for those unfamiliar with programmatic advertising, is its use of AI and like a real-time bidding system to automate and, like, more importantly, streamline the ad buying process. So basically you're able to think of it as an umbrella for your marketing, or you're able to launch like a programmatic campaign, and all you really do is target, specify the target market, the budget, and campaign goals. And then like through analyzing user signals, which is obviously gets going more in depth of the tech side of it, but just basically it's going to figure out through AI and analytics itself who is the right person to be viewing that ad, instead of just a catch-all. So it's definitely a good way, if you are planning on running ads or spending money and budgeting, that programmatic marketing can be a good option for you. Because again, it's going to be the easiest method to make sure that your message is getting in front of the right audience, because it's going to be doing real-time analysis and bidding and media buying for you. So that way, again, you're just always forefront in your target market.
Yeah, and something, this is just another point that I think I didn't mention, or maybe I just mentioned it briefly, but something that, we tell a lot of people we work with, and this is actually part of, our like meal planning program that we do with new clients, is that when we're looking at their marketing, not only do we want to understand, okay, what have you done in the past? what worked for you, what didn't work, why do you think it didn't work? But we also want to look at, okay, what's working? Like, what are your competitors doing? Because sometimes there's a sense of, again, like thinking you need to reinvent the wheel, or maybe it's just, ego getting in the way, right? Making you think that, well, they're doing it this way, I'm going to do it this way. But if everyone's doing it this way, there's probably a reason why. So there's nothing wrong with looking at what your competition is doing. And if it's working for them, it can work for you as well. No, that doesn't mean, directly copying someone, right? But you can take aspects from their business, their marketing, what they're doing, their messaging, and find a way to integrate it into your business. So, if it's working, then it's working, right? You don't have to reinvent the wheel, but someone already made the wheel, right? So you can just put those wheels on your business and roll with it. So, and this is, so I guess going off from this, right? We're talking about marketing, what people should do there. And there's really two sides to it. So, I've heard a lot of people mention their marketing, their sales. Well, really, client acquisition, that's the whole process, right? That's your marketing and your sales. So you want those two to communicate with each other. If your marketing does not fit your sales process, you're just going to, you're going to lose a lot of people, right? Just falling out of the pipeline, and a lot of confused people as well. And if someone's confused, they're probably not going to, make a decision to work with you, at least not then. So, I like looking at it as client acquisition, not just marketing or sales. But, we were just talking about one side of that, which is marketing. Like where are some issues with new entrepreneurs that they may face or they may, encounter regarding their marketing. But, let's talk about their sales, right? Because that's a big part too. If you have your marketing dialed in, it's working, and then you still aren't converting, they're not becoming clients, maybe it's your sales at that point. So, Mike, like I know we've worked with a lot of people, and, I guess on different sides. Sometimes it's someone who they've already had success with sales. They're just looking to expand. So they want to hire a sales team, start doing that. But what about, some of the newer people who they're just getting started? Maybe it's just the owner, right? It's the CEO, lead sales team, right? Their head of marketing. They're wearing every single hat in the company. What are some issues that you've seen like newer entrepreneurs face when it comes to dialing in, their sales process?
So one of the first mistakes that I see people make is going out and trying to hire a, sales team, an SVP of sales, something of that nature, before they really have their marketing and lead generation processes, dialed in. A lot of people look at or think that a salesperson's a panacea for, a business's revenue. Most salespeople are not. They're plug and play for a sales process. They need, everything pre-built for them. You got to hand them scripts and train them and role play with them for 30 plus days, when you could be spending that time, talking to clients and improving your own sales process internally. Once everything is proven and validated, it's my personal opinion that a savvy entrepreneur, what they're going to do is, instead of trying to hire and just delegate everything onto a salesperson, they're going to start trying to automate portions of their process and educate, their potential buyer in a systematic fashion. So what do I mean by that? Instead of just having people book into your calendar and do a presentation from start to finish, they should record portions of their presentation into a video sales letter, so that people are coming into, those calls with the appropriate amount of information to know what it is that they do, how they do it, and why it's important. If it's a more in-depth conversation that's going to be needed, then maybe it's a video sales letter with a webinar or webinar that's pre-recorded. Maybe there's an email sequence that should be sent out. But getting sales is always a battle of value, right? Building value to the point where the buyer is ready to, or agrees that the value is there and it's equivalent to the price point. It's once you pass that subjective value point that people are ready to buy. For a higher ticket offer, that typically takes somewhere between 7 and 9 hours of, interaction with your brand, with you, with your content, your product, your service, etc., your testimonials. So how are you going to get to that 7 to 9 hours of engagement level without spending this 7 to 9 hours on the phone? That should be the first consideration, once someone has a proven offer. From there, once you have those pieces dialed in and what you're saying is repeatable and, repeatable for yourself and easy to train to somebody else, that's when you want to go hire a salesperson, not before, my opinion.
Yeah, I think consistency is key when it comes to growing or dialing in your sales process, right? Especially if you're the owner and you're having a conversation with someone, it's a lot different with you speaking to them. If you're the face of the business, right? If you're the face in the marketing, you're the face of the business, all the deliverables, it's the conversation's different when you're speaking to a prospect versus one of your salespeople. So it's a different voice, but so you want consistency, right? You want to make sure the messaging is dialed in. And one way to do that is finding a good script, right? Like, what do you want? So like you mentioned in terms of the content, right? If you can't be the person presenting that information to them every time, you can record it, right? People use recorded presentations, VSLs. There's a bit of education that needs to be done. And you can educate that person through recorded video, right? And then they can hop on the call with the salesperson. But you want it to be consistent. So writing out a good script that anyone on your team can use, like they don't have to be you to sell. That's going to be like essential to dial in your sales process, because you can't be the only person that can talk and actually close deals for your business. And you don't have to be, right? You just need that person to be educated. You need to figure out what they want help with, why they need help, when they need help, and then have the right person there to ask those questions and make sure that they're the right fit. But again, I think it's consistency at that point.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be consistency, as you talked about, like the whole process itself, right? Meaning if you're going from a marketing process to get someone to hopefully book a call with you, and then they hop on a call with you or your team member, and then the message completely like flips on that prospect, then any work that you did in the marketing prospect or marketing like process to get that interest level, or hopefully someone's seen the value of what your offer is, then when they hop on a call and actually speak to you, you're just reiterating those finer points, right? Or you're touching base on the pain points and the valuation of what it is you can actually help that person out. And a lot of times, unfortunately, that conversation almost flips when you get on a call, if you are not properly scripted and have a defined like marketing to sales process. And like to your point again, is like where some of the clients that we've had real good success with, like in very competitive industries, like let's use life insurance as an example. We've seen drastic increases in those signing up for life insurance through agents by sending out like info videos. And I'm talking like cartoon, easy breakdown, easy to understand, like examples of like what life insurance really is and why it's important. And they send those out as part of like onboarding to somebody who maybe just got a policy with homeowners insurance, basically offer stacking, but at the same time, they're providing some type of infographic that if someone watches it, that infographic's actually doing like two really key points for that sales automation. And that's, it defines the pain point, and then it answers the pain point in the simplest possible manner. So that way, anybody who watches it spends 4 minutes, and then all of a sudden, like 4 minutes watching a cartoon. And then by the time you speak to them again, they're like, yeah, that sounds really interesting. I'm ready to go. And you don't have to spend, call after call trying to just be education, because you can do a lot of that rebuttal handling in education format prior to a lot of sales calls, which then increases your efficiency in sales.
Yeah, Scott, and like you just mentioned, aside from consistency, sometimes simplicity is the way to go as well, right? You want to educate whoever it is you're going to speak with, but you also don't want to confuse them. But so like you mentioned, even in life insurance, using a form of like recorded, like a video that's basically an educational piece going out, you're answering those questions for most people, and it's always going to look different depending on your business. But if you can answer who, right? So who you are, who you work with, what you do, why you do it, how you do it, and then sometimes even going further in it, saying when you do it, right? Giving someone a timeline so they know what to expect. If you can identify those things, when you're starting your marketing as well as your sales, it's a good way to help you stay on track and be consistent, because you're not going to change the messaging, right? You are who you are, you do what you do it, why you do it, right? And then you can say how you do it. So yeah, I think simplicity and consistency, those are really just key factors that oftentimes gets overlooked. If you're using like a specific sales process, and let's say, for example, you have your calendar set up for your strategy calls, your discovery calls, whatever you call them. And maybe when someone books on that, there's specific like information that you want to gather from them. And then maybe there's a whole process before you speak with them, whether it's sending out more information or asking them to fill out more forms, submit more documents, whatever that is. If you deviate from that process, it's kind of hard to compare. That's kind of comparing apples and oranges at that point. And in terms of knowing what works, and this is whether it's your sales or your marketing, right? You want to have data, and, to actually trust that data, it needs to be consistent, right? All the variables need to be the same. If not, you are just comparing apples and oranges at that point. So it's consistency and simplicity. So you don't want to confuse anyone, but you also don't want to leave them to a point of where they're just making up their own thoughts in their head, right? Or answering questions that maybe you could have answered for them, but you didn't answer it. And then so now it's just kind of your imagination running wild. So I think those are pretty key things there. So, but I guess going off from this now, so we're mentioning like we're discussing what it looks like with newer entrepreneurs getting started with sales. And Mikey, you did touch on this earlier, I think briefly, but let's look at this from a different angle. So let's say that you are a somewhat new entrepreneur, maybe you've been in business for 6, 12 months, whatever it is, but you're at this point where you do want to hire a sales team so you can pass over some of those responsibilities because maybe you're tied up working with clients. What would you say to someone who is, or I guess two things. So how can we help someone identify if they're ready to hire a sales team, right? Because some people want to do that before they should. And then also for someone, if they are in a position or a place to where they should do that, how should they go about like getting that process started?
So can you guys hear me all right? Nice. So I would say a good one of the criteria that you can use to gauge whether or not you're ready to hire salespeople is, do you have frequently asked questions, already built, or could you put it together pretty quickly? What are the 11 to 13, questions that every potential client asks about? Do you have a script or presentation that you give that is pretty much automatic? Are you there at that point? Or could you at least put that together in a relatively short amount of time? If you say no to those two, you're probably not there. A third one that I would add, are you generating enough revenue currently doing sales yourself, where if you bring on a salesperson and they don't produce for 60 to 90 days, can you cover a base or a draw for them? And it's not going to impact you personally. Because if you have to work extra, right, the fact of the matter is you're going to have to work a little bit less generating business yourself to spend time role playing and working with this new salesperson, getting them ready. Right? It's now an additional job and responsibility that you've added to your plate. So before you can fully delegate it, you're actually taking on more work. So can you handle that work? That's a good, way of judging it. Do you have enough leads to spread out between yourself and somebody else so that they get enough at-bats? And by at-bats, I just mean, live tries, right? Not everybody, when you go into the batting cage for the first time, you're probably not going to hit the ball for the first 10, 15, maybe 20. But once you figure out where to swing it, and with the timing, you can knock it out of the park every time. So do you have the bandwidth financially, temporally, et cetera, to give the guy a chance to be successful or the girl a chance to be successful? One aside there, I would recommend hiring an intro call person, or a setter prior to hiring a closer, quote unquote. And for those of you that don't know the difference, a good setter or intro call person is really someone that does two things. They're personable and they ask good questions. They're good at screening out, unqualified people. That is an easier job to teach and an easier role to coach and train someone into. And they're typically going to be less expensive. On track earnings on average to be competitive should be between 75 and 125,000 a year for that person. Whereas a high quality closer is going to expect to make 150 to $300,000 a year. So just by adding that, filter in the front, you can increase your productivity substantially, and it minimizes the workload as far as training and getting the person up to speed. So, that would be my first step, is getting that person into place and then replacing myself after everything else is working perfectly. But, what are your thoughts, Chris?
Yeah, I think starting out with a setter probably makes sense. But also, you need to think about whoever you hire for that position. They're going to be that bridge between your marketing and sales, right? If they're not doing the closing, they're just setting for whoever's going to be a closer. Maybe that's you, and you're just kind of delegating some of the responsibilities there. But that person, they are going to be that bridge between the marketing and sales, because, in most situations, whoever it is, whatever the prospect, however they came to you, however they found you, they probably haven't actually spoken to someone yet. So that's going to be the first person they speak with in the company. So you do want to make sure that, like you mentioned, they're a personable person. They're going to ask good qualifying questions, because really they're also being used as like a filter, right? As much as, I think a lot of people would say, I want to be able to help everyone. The truth is that you can't help everyone, right? Like you mentioned before, Mikey, if you're trying to speak to everyone, you're really speaking to no one at that point. But I think understanding your own limitations, right? You can't help everyone, whether it's financially or just what their exact problem is. So, a good setter should be able to help identify that. So they're also, they're being that bridge connecting the marketing to sales. They're also helping to increase, maybe a need with that prospect before they meet with the closer, making sure it's the right person. But also I think from another side, and this is just, so if you are, let's say if you are the main, like you're the face of the business, you've been doing all the sales, and you are going to hire another salesperson, right? Whether that's a setter or a closer, one really big thing, and this just, it seems to get overlooked like so often, and it makes sense, right? Because you're looking at it from your point of view. But if you're looking to hire a good salesperson, whether it's a closer or a setter, you need to think about it from their perspective, which is, what does the money look like? And like you mentioned, making sure you actually have enough leads, enough calls booked on the calendar for that person to have enough at bats. But also and it doesn't even really matter what industry you're in. You're not going to keep good people on the bus if they're not making money. And especially if you want like a top quality, like a really good salesperson who's going to be consistent, follow a process, update the CRM notes, whatever you need for them to do, they're going to expect to be getting paid. So if you don't have enough leads on the calendar, if you're not going to assign, a high enough commission, or whether it's base plus commission or just full commission, don't expect that person to be along, on the ride forever. There is like a high turnover rate in sales, but the truth of it is, really in any job, sometimes money is going to speak louder than, than just words. So if you do have, a process, commission structure, payment, whatever it is in place where the salesperson can make good money, they're probably going to stick along for the ride, and they're probably you're going to get better results from them as well. But, don't, you can do it, right? Anyone can do whatever they want, but just be aware that if you're trying to hire a salesperson before you should, and you really don't have enough leads or enough money coming in to actually pay them like a decent wage, right? So where they can be happy with their compensation, you're probably not going to get good results. But also, again, that person, they may just be using you as a part-time job until they find something else. So
Yeah, I mean, you're wasting their time and yours, and you really have nobody to be upset with except for yourself. One of my mentors, early on in business, he said, grow until it hurts. The thought process there is you don't want to take on another person or another expense until you truly can't handle it yourself. And you're, a business ultimately is about making money. It's not a business if you're not generating profits and revenue over your expenses. It's a hobby, right? So for most of us, the secondary piece of that is bringing some value to the world that we truly care about, right? That being said, if you're not generating the revenue and you don't have the inflow of potential revenue generating opportunities to support a salesperson, then it's not time to get one. And you should never expect, you're just spinning your wheels and wasting your time and money and everybody else's if you're trying to hire on a salesperson, especially a full commission, no base salesperson, if you don't have a substantial amount of qualified leads. And as an aside, something that you were mentioning before with that setter person and kind of their role, one common thing that a lot of business owners really don't appreciate is the difference between a marketing qualified lead and a sales qualified lead. A marketing qualified lead is somebody that's generally interested. They're within your serviceable and addressable market. A sales qualified lead is all of those things, but at the point in the process where they're ready to make a decision and purchase a solution for the problem that you solve. And they're ready to do that in the relative near term. So that's, people say, oh, I got tons of leads. And it's really just a bunch of G sheets or Excel sheets with contact information. Those are not sales qualified leads. And you're never going to get a good salesperson in your organization trying to tell them to cold call, 1,000 people that have no idea what it is that you do, how it works or anything else. So I think being realistic is the number one thing business owners need to be when it comes to hiring and bringing on a salesperson into their organization.
Yeah, this isn't always the case, but in a lot of situations, if you don't have your marketing dialed in to where there's consistent, right, qualified leads coming in, you're probably not in a position to hire a salesperson. And if that is the case and you still think that maybe you have enough leads coming in to do that, just be transparent. Because think about your time as well. Like, you don't want to waste that person's time, because if you're wasting their time, there's a lot of silent quitting going on where someone's kind of quitting. They're just working another job, but they haven't told you, or maybe they just walk away. It's like, hey, I'm done. Right. Day of, then, who knows what happened, but for your sake as well. Like, do you really want to hire someone, train them, get them set up on all of whatever software you're using, get them access to all of your documents, go through that whole process, which is going to take a few weeks, right? And then give them enough at-bats, and then you end up losing that person. And then you have to hire someone to go through that whole process again. So I think transparency, transparency, which could be in the form of education, educating them on your offer, making sure they understand what you're selling, educating them on like what your marketing looks like, what your lead flow looks like having all the available numbers. Because also a good salesperson, if they come on, if they've been working in sales, they're going to ask you questions about your conversion rates, like your lead flow, your marketing channels. They're going to ask you those questions. And if you can't answer them, you're probably giving them the answers that maybe they were hoping not to hear. So
Yeah, I think in all fairness, there are some, outliers to these statements, right? There are some products and some services where once it's developed, you can bring on a high quality business development expert that has a deep and long Rolodex in a certain industry specific area that you service. There are some unique exceptions to what we're saying. That being said, generally 99.99% of the time, if you don't have your message dialed in, if you don't have your target market dialed in, you don't have some form of marketing and lead generation figured out and dialed in, and you don't have some level of a sales process dialed in, you're absolutely not ready to hire a high-powered salesperson. At best, you could hire a setter, intro call person, receptionist, if you would, that acts as a little bit of a filter and builds the overall value of your time. But even that step is a little bit of a jump if you don't have everything refined and know what you're doing. So
yes, just like anything in life, right? You need to be prepared, understand what it takes before you get started doing something. If you want to build your own house, you should probably make sure you have all the materials and tools first, right? Otherwise, you're going to be sleeping outside, for a long time, probably a lot longer than you want to. So
if you want to make jambalaya, you got to have the right recipe. You know what I mean? You got to have the right ingredients.
right.
Don't know how to do it any other way.
Yeah. Same with anything else, right? This is with all of our clients, is that, we work with them to see, okay, what ingredients do you have? And then what recipes make sense for you, right? And that could be on your marketing or your sales, but you do want to make sure that you have everything that you need, before you start to make whatever that dish is, whether that's involving your sales or marketing.
Hey, do you know what the average, so you're talking about turnover in sales earlier. Do you know what the average attrition rate is industry wide for salespeople, for businesses?
No, but I think you should tell us.
95% in 2 years. 95% in 2 years. So second question, do you know how long it takes on average for a salesperson to become competent in the role in any level of enterprise sales? So if it's at all sophisticated as far as the sale or the target market. I'm taking a guess at how long it takes for them to get up to speed. What's that, Scott?
36 months.
Try again.
18 months.
10.
Yeah.
10 months. So if you're losing 95% of your salespeople on average every 2 years, and it takes you 10 months to really get them up to speed, that's a ton of time wasted. You're only getting productivity out of, 45% of them for the time that they are actually competent. So that's a big jump. It's a big commitment. It's not something that should be taken lightly. Yeah, people need to learn how to do it themselves before trying to put it on somebody else. But hey, that's what we're here for.
Guys, so I think we're about to cut it off. Man, thanks for joining us, for another episode of In the Kitchen. This was your first time meeting us over at, funnelchef.io. We work with primarily coaches, consultants, and agency owners to implement proven recipes for success in their business so that they can attract more clients, generate more revenue and profits, all while avoiding, the dreaded guesswork, right? Trying to guess and see what's going to work. So, this is taking proven systems and processes that have worked for, us and our business, our clients and their business, and even our competitors throughout the years. And we boiled them down to simple but specific, detail-oriented processes that you can implement into your business, right? And again, this is without doing guesswork, trying to figure out what's going to work. So you don't have to be a tech guru, a smooth talking salesperson or a genius to have success. Just like a good recipe, as long as you have the right ingredients, you follow the step-by-step process, you can also get great results. So, if you'd like to learn more about who we are, what we do, why we do it, and how we do it, and then also, find out if what we do even makes sense for you, check us out at funnelchef.io or anywhere on the internet.